Good evening and welcome back to the third episode of the Youth on the Move podcast, where we gather once a month to discuss issues that's happening in our world today and bring the truth to today's youth. My name is Jayla O, and I'm a senior mass media arts major at Clark Atlanta University, and I am the hostess for Youth on the Move. Now, not only is October Breast Cancer Awareness Month, but it's also Domestic Violence Awareness Month as well. The CDC reports that more than 1 in 3 women and more than 1 in 4 men in the United States experience intimate partner violence in their lifetime. Black women, especially, are 35% more likely to experience domestic violence than white women. Today, we'll be discussing what domestic violence is and how to get help or help someone you may know. And joining us today, we have Miss LaTonja C.Davis. How are you doing today?
I'm doing just wonderful.
That's great. Well, I'm going to allow you to just introduce yourself briefly, so you can go ahead and do that if you would like.
Okay, I am LaTonja C.Davis. I am a mother of three, two grown boys and one 8-year-old daughter. I also have two granddaughters and one grandson on the way in the next couple of weeks.
Congrats.
Thank you. Yes. Right now, I am a self-contained teacher. I've been in education for the last 15 years. And so I specialize in special education in all content areas, as well as I am the basketball coach and the softball coach, and very avid member of Greater High Hope Christian Center in Edenton, Georgia. And I enjoy just spending time with family, listening to music, and getting to know people.
Okay, well, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
You're welcome. We're going to go ahead and hop right on in. What does the different forms of domestic violence look like, whether it's physical, mental, or even financial?
Physical, I would say physical domestic violence is the physical abuse, meaning the hitting, the slapping, the punching, where there's evidence that has been some kind of struggle or some kind of physical attack on a male or female. Verbal abuse, I would say, would be the degrading remarks that someone is giving to someone else, whether you're in a relationship or you don't even have to be in a relationship. But verbal abuse is, you're degrading people. You're calling them out their names. You're using slurs or any other sort of form of language. Also, mental abuse. That comes, I ain't gonna say it comes with over time, but when a person, doesn't have like high self-esteem and they're constantly, beating themselves up over stuff, then that a mental abuse challenge on people. And so those are kind of like the top three: physical, mental, and emotional abuse as well. Kind of ties hand in hand with that mental abuse.
What about financial abuse? Because I feel like oftentimes we hear a lot of course, the physical and the emotional and the mental, but what some people may not be aware of or maybe even identify is the financial abuse.
Mm-hmm.
So can you shed some light on what financial abuse might be?
Financial abuse could be anyone, I would think, that is controlling of all financial situation, especially if you're in like a relationship where one person is control of all of the monies or any financial need. They make all the decisions for the household. They don't try to, incorporate anyone else with the decision making. And so it kind of ties everybody else's hand when one person is making that decision. Or if you are by yourself and you don't have a spouse and you constantly find yourself living paycheck to paycheck, and you can't make ends meet, and every time you look around, you're having to pay Peter and borrow from Paul, as the old people would say. And that can lead to financial abuse, especially when you don't know how to get out of that situation.
Okay. So what would you say would be some early signs of an abusive or potential abusive relationship?
Early signs of potential abuse relationship is when it gets to the point where any little thing makes a person upset. It can be walking in the house and maybe dinner's not done, or it can be someone had a bad day at work and they take that they take that physical abuse out of someone else. It could be, the name calling, or um, as far as relationship and not relationship, it can also all the way go down to sexual abuse, where one person, wants to be in an intimate relationship and the other person don't, and there's not a compromise between the two. And then one person decide they're going to do what they want to do anyway without the consent of the other person. So the first sign would be, when you get to the point where you're uncomfortable and it's degrading and you feel unsafe, then I would say that would be sort of the first signs, when something as small and trivial that blows up into something major.
Hmm. So I know you said about when you feel unsafe, but what about some people who maybe they don't recognize that it's abuse at first? I don't want to say denial, but they just like do not recognize that it's abuse at first. What do you have to say about that? Because what if like there were signs, but they didn't recognize that it was signs at first?
Well, for me, the signs were noticeable, but I was one of those people that ignored the signs for personal reason. I did have two small kids at the time, and my past relationship was one that I grew up in a home with a single mother, and so my whole mindset was I didn't want to raise my two boys without their father, and so
Mm-hmm.
it ended up happening. Um, it started out real subtle. For me, it wasn't a big deal, but it was a big deal because I didn't see domestic violence growing up. So the whole domestic violence avenue was brand new to me. And so the first incident that happened was I was at Georgia Southern. I was a student at Georgia Southern, and then me and my significant other, I was in my dorm room, and he was looking through my dorm room, and I came outside, and then the next thing I know, I woke up on the ground where he had literally choked me out, and I blacked out, and so that was like the first sign. But me not seeing that growing up, I didn't really know. And so that's why I think a lot of women mistaken, because a lot of women or men begin to think it's something that they did when it's really not something that they did to cause the physical abuse or whatever. And so we just kind of brush that under the rug, and then we think that it's going to get better, and it doesn't. And so when things start to change and you feel that gut feeling that this is not healthy for you, then it's time to try to evaluate before it gets to a point where you can't get out of the situation.
Mm. And I heard you mention that you said you were in college, correct?
Yes.
So with you being so young, how were you able to get out of that situation?
Well, that was the point. I didn't get out of the situation. I actually stayed in that situation for 10 long years.
Mm.
Um, Back and forth, in and out, making excuses as to why we should be together, not really having the guidance of someone to tell me that this was incorrect or this was not the way to live. Because once again, no one close enough to me was able to, provide that information to me. So
Mhm.
once again, when you are not in a situation, then sometimes people feel as though they can't provide you advice if they've never been through it. And I think that was my situation. I wasn't connected with anyone to tell me to get out. And so I ended up staying in it until it just got to the point where I said enough was enough.
Hmm. And so you said it took 10 years. So after you were able to get out of that situation, how were you able to move on mentally?
Mentally, it took some time because we had children together.
Hmm.
His family was a close knit family. And my family was also a close-knit family, but I was that person that didn't really talk to anyone. I didn't really have a whole lot of friends. And then the friends or the associates that I had, if I told them, there was no, concrete advice that they could give me. And so what I ended up having to do was just, for me, it was more of trying to figure things out by myself. And so I ended up positioning myself in the church that I'm in now. And I've been a member of this church for like 20 years. And there is where I kind of gradually got into the phase of having to talk about it. And I got comfortable with talking about it because then I realized there were other people that had been through the same similar situation. And so mentally, once I began to express myself and talk about it and get around older women, it became easier. But I think the most part was the act of forgiveness. I knew that as long as I harbored these inner feelings toward him, that he was always going to win, and that I would always keep this anger inside of me whenever I saw him. So it got to the point of me having to release that anger in forgiveness to be able to go on with my life in a productive way.
Hmm. So, how has it affected, or do you think that it's had an effect on how you approach relationships now?
To a certain extent, my main concern back then was the effect that it was going to have on my children. And I had two boys. And my main thing was I didn't want my sons to grow up and witness that. And then they do the same thing when they got into relationships. And so that was one of my driving forces, was to make sure that they understood, and they were young, but
Mhm.
you know, they was old enough. Well, one of the oldest one was old enough to see, and he remembers stuff that I probably don't remember. But that was like my driving force, was for them not to duplicate what they were seeing. Because sometimes when you look at domestic violence, it's a generational curse. And it means that, some people may have seen it, or it may happen to your grandmother, or it may happen to someone in your family, and nobody knows how to get out of it. And so that was one of my driving points, was to make sure um, that they didn't reciprocate the same feeling or harbor the same feeling toward women when they got older. And so that was kind of one of the things that I did mentally, was, try to prepare them the best way I can with being a single mother, and just keeping them active and not much, having them in any kind of violent situation. So as far as other relationships were concerned, yes, because I limit myself then to not bringing men around my sons whatsoever. Not really introducing them to anyone else unless it was just somebody I was really involved with. But for the most part, I really just kept to myself because I didn't want them to have that image of, every man was the same way.
Mhm. Okay. But and when you did get involved with the other men after that relationship, what about towards them? Like, were you more reluctant or just kind of like holding back a little bit because of what had happened, or were
Oh,
you just 100% open?
oh no. No. Certain things would trigger me
Mm-hmm.
in a relationship. And I really didn't have a whole lot of relationships. I mean, I probably after that maybe had probably three that I probably consider relationship. But one of the things that would trigger me, if you were playing and you pulled my hair, that was a trigger for me because that brought back something. I didn't you know, as far as I grew up in a family where we enjoyed watching the wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
That was an issue sometimes, if we were play fighting, and then if it got too far, and I'll back off. But for some, it was just small triggers that was set. They ain't gonna set me off, but if somebody called me out my name, then that was an issue. If somebody spoke to me in a harsh tone, that was a problem. Or it got to the point where I shut down for a long time. I wouldn't talk and I wouldn't express my feelings. And that still is kind of an issue now, is that I keep a lot of stuff to myself. I limit myself to to friends or associates, as you would call them. And so I try, for the most part, still stay in that little bubble to myself and try to work things out without people trying to be all up in my business and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. So what was your breaking point? Because like a lot of people, when they are in a really, really bad situation, it's not the first time that they get hit, it's when they leave. It,
Correct.
a lot of times it's after a few times, and it's always something like sometimes something major, sometimes something minor that happens that's their breaking point. So what was your breaking point in your situation?
I actually had a couple breaking points. I think my first major breaking point was my son, my oldest son. He probably was 5 at the time, and we had a graduation celebration for him. And his family came down, and my family came down, and we was all at a hotel because that's where his family was staying at, and all the children were in the pool.
Mm-hmm.
I'm afraid of water, so I don't do swimming pools or beaches or anything like that. And so my son was walking back and forth, not in the pool, but just walking back and forth. But all his cousins were in the pool, and he and his father was gone. So his sister and I was sitting there talking, and I was watching, and my son slipped in the pool, and so I panicked. But he only stayed in the pool for like maybe 5 seconds because his uncle jumped in and got him, and he was only like in the 3 feet of water. So
Mm-hmm.
that night, that particular night, his father and I got into it, and it got very heated to the point where there was a gun pull, and it was either one of us going to hell or one of us going to jail today.
Mm-hmm.
So and I was like, my thing was, it wasn't my fault he failed, but his thing was I wasn't paying attention to him. And my thing was, well, you wasn't there, so how can you tell me what you're doing? And so it was bits and pieces of things such as that. But my major breaking point, and by that time I was kind of over the situation. It was one of those things where you get, I ain't gonna say accustomed to it, but I got to the point of you're gonna do what you're gonna do, so do whatever you're gonna do and just leave me alone.
Mm-hmm.
Last breaking point was I was in my apartment. We were not together. We had been separated. He had moved on. I had moved on. I had a cousin that was living with me at the time, and she was 6, 7 months pregnant. And I had a friend over, and the friend and I were playing cards. And so he drove trucks, and so he stopped by unannounced, and he had some clothes for my sons. And so when he walked into my apartment, he saw the guy sitting on the bed. Everybody was fully dressed, but because it was another guy, and because my sons were home, then it blew up. Oh, you got this other man around my kids, yada yada yada. So it went from there, and all the way to the point where the other guy went to the car, got a gun, and he let him took the gun from him. And in the process of him taking the gun from him, he hit me and looked at the guy and said, "What you gonna do?" And the guy did nothing. And so at that point in time, I was like, you can leave. That was the other guy. You can go. You served me no purpose or whatever. The police was called, and I was working in the court system at the time. So at that particular era, I knew plenty of the judges. I knew the police department. I knew the sheriff department. I knew the district attorney and all those people because I worked at the courthouse. And so when we went to court, I knew the judge personally, and the judge looked at me, spoke to me, and his comment was he was going to put him on probation for 5 years. And during those 5 years, there was supposed to be no contact. And the judge made it clear, if she calls me and tell me that you said anything to her, even if you're not around her, I'm going to lock you up. And so I said, "You giving me that kind of power?" And he said, "Yes." This was a judge. And he said, "Yes. If you call me about anything, within these next 5 years, I don't care what it is, I'm gonna lock him up. And so I didn't use that power, but it was just a thought process of I got you now. And so by the time we got to that point, I was over the situation, but the situation I guess wasn't over me. So at that particular time, that's when everything came to a halt because I knew then that I was protected now by the law, and that if something happened, then I have this, I can hold this over your head, or I know now that nothing is going to happen to me because you can't come close to me. And then I have the leverage now, where before there was nothing or nobody that I could turn to that gave me a sense of security.
Oh wow. Well, I'm sorry that happened to you, but I'm glad, you was protected by the law in the end.
Correct.
It's a lot. Okay.
It is.
Well, what do you think are some factors that keep a lot of people from leaving abusive relationships besides the fear of possibly getting murdered? What are some other factors that make them stay in a relationship?
I think for me, it was my children, and that's a big misconception that a lot of women or men have is staying in relationship, whether abusive or not, is staying in relationship because of children. Um, and that was me. That was my mindset from the get go, that I didn't want my kids to grow up the same way I did, and I was going to do whatever possible to make that happen, which turned out to be the wrong decision. But I learned from that. And so I would tell anybody, don't do it because of kids. Um, don't do it because of stability. Meaning, if somebody is giving you a plate, or if y'all are living together, don't stay just because you feel as though you don't have anywhere else to go. That's a biggie. And then I would say also to make sure, if you're in that kind of relationship, make sure that you have some sort of communication with somebody that you can trust, and that you can call on, and that they understand what's going on. And also, in the back of your mind, always some kind of way have some kind of escape plan. Whether it's, when he go to work, I'm going to do this or something, especially if it gets to the point where there is a lot of controlling, and where you feel as though, you might lose your life. And some women don't have that, they never think about losing their life until it's too late. And, I say, if somebody ever tells you, I love you to death, or if I can't have you, nobody can have you.
Yeah, I don't like that line. I don't like that line.
Me neither. That's the sign right there that, get out. Because some people really take that to heart. If I can't have you, nobody can't have you. Somebody tells you that, then take that for what it is. And don't ask no questions about what you mean. Just believe them if they say that.
So what do you think about, because a lot of, I could say, a lot of like younger adults, like, early 20s, late teens, that basically my generation, I've noticed that from observing other people's relationships, toxic relationships at that, I've noticed that a lot of people, for some reason, think that things such as, oh, they boyfriend or girlfriend doing these pop-ups on them is cute. I've noticed that a lot of people my age often think that, like you said, that if can nobody have you, if I can't have you, can nobody have you. They think stuff like that is cute. They also think that a little play fighting, basically fighting each other during an argument. They think all that is cute. So wouldn't you say that those are signs, early signs of an abusive relationship as well?
Yes, very much so. I mean, yes. And when I taught high school for 2 years, and I had a mentoring group called Divas. And that was one of my things with a lot of the girls in high school was, if they was in a relationship, and you're play fighting, or if a boy grabbed her by the arm and snatched her, like, that ain't cute at all. I'm like, no, we're not doing that. Oh, we're just playing, Miss Davis. No. I said, your plan is going to lead to something else. I said, because in this instant, you playing, but what happens when he or she is not playing? And so, and most women, back the younger generation, I would say, some women want this thug boy.
Aggressive. Mm-hmm.
Yes, and because they think that's love. And that's not love if he's yanking on you or grabbing on you and saying stuff, and you like, oh, he just playing. No, he's not. Or no, she's not. Because women can be just as abusive as men.
Mm-hmm.
So, if it gets to that point, oh, they popping up on your job unannounced, no, that means they have some insecurities.
Mm-hmm.
And insecurities lead into, and when a person is insecure, then they're not happy with themselves, they're not happy with you, they're not happy with a relationship, and that leads to jealousy and envious. And when a person is jealous and envy, then they're gonna act out on that jealousy. And it's kind of, you don't know what people's mindsets are, but early signs is that kind of thing. But once again, if he or she say, if I can't have you, I love you to death. No, don't love me to death. Please don't love me to death.
I don't want you to love me to death.
At all. No.
Please don't do that to yourself. Please.
Please don't. No, there's somebody else out there for you. Go on. We're not together. And you got to be careful with certain people that honestly believe that.
Mm-hmm.
You got to be careful of how you talk to them. And this world is just crazy. And I sent Adrian a message the other day about, I can't remember what this guy was, but he shot his baby mama in front of her 3 kids.
Mm.
I can't remember the quote, but the quote was something simple, was, oh, now I feel better, or I'm encouraged now, or at least I got my revenge back, that kind of thing. That is no remorse. With some people, there is no remorse, that they'll do this in front of kids, and those kids are scarred for life.
Right. Very traumatized.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yes.
Well, like you said, that girls can be abusive as well. That's a fact. I think a lot of times we overlook the men who get abused, because most of the time we hear about the women or think about the men beating on the women, when really females could be just as abusive as males. And also, men who are victimized are less likely than women to report their situation to the police.
Mm-hmm.
So, what are your thoughts on men not wanting to tell?
Because it's this code. If you getting beat up by your women, then they're gonna honk and soft, and the other people. Man, how you let that happen? But you have some women that are very aggressive, and they don't mind slapping, punching, kicking, hitting a man.
Mm-hmm.
And, some men were raised not to put their hands on women regardless of what they do. And but it gets to a point where anybody is not just gonna let somebody just beat on them. But you do have those men that are in those kind of relationships where they are being physically abused, emotionally abused, mentally, and sexually abused. I mean, we can't overlook the sexual abuse either, because I think now it's probably more prevalent now than physical abuse. So for those men that are also in those type of relationships, same thing. Make sure you have somebody that you can talk to. Make sure you have an open line of communication with somebody that is trustworthy, somebody who is going to share information with you, somebody that is going to try to help you get an escape plan or give you that advice on how to get out. And always be there as a comfort and support. But by all means, report it, and not just sit there and take it just because you're a guy.
Mm-hmm.
Women can be, we women, or us women, however you want to say it, we can get jazzy at the mouth.
Very jazzy.
Yes, and cut them down to bite-sized pieces. So, verbal abuse is just as rough as physical abuse.
Hmm.
It
So,
is.
what advice do you give to someone who may want to help someone else that may be stuck in a situation?
My advice would be for me, when it first started, I reached out um, to my local solicitors after were reported, and they put me in they put both of us in a program that the solicitor's office had. It was a battered women program, and during that program, he was in a separate class, I was in a separate class, and it gave me the opportunity to talk about the situation. It gave me the opportunity to, look for signs and all that kind of stuff. But it also gave me the courage to know that I deserved better than what I was getting as far as the treatment was concerned. And he, on the other hand, also received, he did his classes as to, learning that it could have been a repetitive cycle that he's seen somebody else or he's seen his father do it or whoever do it. So for me, it was, getting into a program and getting that mental help where somebody's there, that listening ear for you. I would say don't go at it alone. Don't sit there and keep it to yourself. And make sure you have somebody. If it's a family member, a friend, a coworker, make sure you have somebody that you can talk to, or some kind of outlet. Um, that you can reach out to somebody, and so that somebody can always be aware. And then also, I recently seen that there are like hand signals and gestures that you can give to somebody that you're close with to let them know that you're in a abuse relationship. So you can come up with your own signals. A lady did something. She was on the phone I saw it on Facebook. She was on the phone talking to her friend, and they was having a casual conversation, and she did something with her hand, like she opened up her fist and rubbed her chin. And by the time she did that, the guy came in the background. He went to the refrigerator. But whatever that hand signal was, it alerted her friend that she needed for someone to call the police.
Mm.
She was in an abusive relationship. And so I would say, make sure you just got a strong communication system with somebody. If you ever feel as though your life is in danger, and that other person or somebody knows, to get some help as needed.
Hmm. And do you recommend or have any resources that you know of that could help anybody?
Well, I don't personally have a resource. Like I said, I use the solicitor that was back home, and that solicitor now is deceased. But I would say, try to find a shelter or someone who has like a battered women's shelter, or someone that specializes in domestic violence, or someone you can talk to. I mean, anybody that you can get information from, that can help you out of the situation. Um, I don't know if there's a national hotline or anything of that nature, because it's been a long time, since I've been out of the domestic violence atmosphere. But
Mhm.
that's where I ended up going, was to the solicitor, getting that information from the battered women's group.
Okay, well, thank you so much for sharing your story with us and being so open.
Oh, most
We're going
definitely.
to go ahead and wrap it up. Where can we follow you on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter?
I'm on Facebook as Catrice LaTonja. My name is backwards because somebody stole my Facebook account. Sure.
Oh.
Last year. Yeah, somebody stole that last year. I am on Instagram. What is my name on Instagram? I don't know. I am on Instagram as, I think, tantalizing 31. I think that's what it is. I'm not sure. I don't know.
It's
I
okay.
that, but
We
I think
all
that's,
put it
yes,
down.
tantalizing 31. That's me. Tantalizing
Okay.
31. I knew it was something. And I also have I'm getting ready to push it and launch it. I also have my own tutoring and mentoring group called Stars of Excellence Tutoring and Mentoring. Um, that I am certified through the state. I am licensed through the state. And so I'm getting ready to launch that entrepreneur business where I will be tutoring academically, but my mentoring part will be focused on grown-ups and giving them an outlet to if they're overwhelmed, to express themselves. And also I am very passionate about domestic violence, and so that was also part of the reason why I did the entrepreneurship business. And so it's called Future Stars of Excellence, tutoring and mentoring. But yes, I am on Facebook and Instagram.
Okay. Well, y'all make sure y'all add her on Facebook, follow her on Instagram, be on the lookout for her new program. Again,
Yes.
thank you so much for being with us today. Below in the description is the domestic violence hotline. So if you know anyone or if you yourself need some help, feel free to use the resources that is down below in the description for your help, for your own goods. Use it, use it, use it.
Yes.
And again, I am Jayla O, and this is Miss LaTonja on Youth on the Move, episode 3. And thank y'all so much for tuning in.